For a long time, we have been waiting for Yuji Itadori to finally get a power-up within Jujutsu Kaisen. It seems like he's always been one step behind all of the other sorcerers. Even throughout Shibuya, he was able to beat Mahito, but then there was a new level of sorcerers that became involved in the story, and that was the level of people like Kenjaku, Ryu, Kashimo, and all of the stronger sorcerers that came back from the past, plus the strong sorcerers that are a part of the Jujutsu Society like Yuta, Hikari, and Maki getting an upgrade. This whole new power curve that happened in the series sort of left Yuji in the dust. And it's not like Yuji really deserved this, right? He's been through so much already, and it sort of seemed like Gege was just beating Yuji up at this point. But in the recent chapter, Yuji has finally got some redemption. We have all been waiting on Yuji to get a power up, and it has finally come. Yuji Itadori now has a curse technique that allows him to swap bodies. In the recent chapter, we see Yuji and Kusakabe are actually training together in a dojo. And at first, it's just like, okay, well, Yuji and Kusakabe may be just physically training in order for Yuji to get better at martial arts. But we see that once Yuji flips Kusakabe on his back, Yuji says to him, that should be a good enough warm-up. It's about time for you to get a handle on this, Itadori. To which it seems Kusakabe responds with, yes, sir. But of course, this isn't Yuji calling Kusakabe Itadori. And of course, Kusakabe wouldn't be saying yes, sir to Yuji. What has happened here is that Yuji and Kusakabe have switched bodies, and Kusakabe is telling him, you need to get a hang of this new technique that you have. And I know that a lot of people are wondering, well, what is the method for how Yuji can swap bodies now? And I sort of think that Yuji was getting at it earlier in the series, where Yuji said that he was more like a cursed object now. And the reason that this is so groundbreaking is because the way that cursed objects work in Jujutsu Kaisen, especially in the cases of a person turning into a cursed object, is because once you eat that part of the person, their consciousness goes into your body. And that is what we see Sukuna does to Megumi when they're on the rooftop. Sukuna put all of his cursed energy into a finger, and then put the finger down Megumi's mouth, and once Megumi swallowed the finger, Sukuna now arose within Megumi. So something similar could have happened to Yuji. You know, since he is more like a cursed object now, maybe Kusakabe ate a part of Yuji and they just sort of swapped. But the reason that this might not be the case is because in the case of Sukuna, he joined Megumi's body, right? Like Megumi's consciousness is still there, but now Sukuna is in there with him. So if it was the whole cursed object route, then that means that Yuji and Kusakabe would be sharing the same body. So I don't think that it is the cursed object route because, you know, it does seem that they have completely switched. And if Yuji did what Sukuna did, then the outcome would have just been Yuji within Kusakabe's body and Kusakabe still in there, but more suppressed. So if anything, I think that the method in which Yuji swapped might be related to the things that we know about the soul and how Yuji interacts with it. Because we knew back at the beginning of the series that Yuji has a good understanding of the soul. And it's not that he only had an understanding because Sukuna resided within him. That was the method at the beginning of the series, but we see as the story goes on, Yuji becomes more in touch with his soul, especially throughout Shibuya. We know that on average, sorcerers are not used to protecting their souls because they don't actually have an understanding of the soul to begin with, and that only a few sorcerers or characters in the series at all have a good understanding of the soul. And we know that Maki is now one of these people. The best case for this would be Mahito. You know how Mahito basically said that sorcerers just aren't in tune with their souls, but Yuji became basically an exception, especially since the beginning of the series. Maki gained this ability recently, you know, she gained this ability in her fight with Cursed Spirit Naoya. But Yuji has had this ability to understand and grow and learn about the soul since the beginning of the series. And we know that emotions have ties to the soul. It is said that emotions come from the soul, and you know how obviously emotions are used to make cursed energy. So we know that there's this whole sort of triangle, you could say, between emotions, cursed energy, and the soul. And throughout the series, Yuji has just become accustomed to learning about all three of these. Especially throughout Shibuya when he's always faced with the worst challenges. He destroyed the entire city of Shibuya and he was breaking down, and then he had to resolve himself in order to keep moving forwards. Then when he fought against Choso, he was hurt even more, and we know that Yuji's soul was being hurt this entire time. Because remember when Mahito, Yuji, and Todo all were about to fight, Mahito looked over at Yuji and said his soul is about 10%. So this means that Yuji just wasn't taking normal damage. His body wasn't just going through normal turmoil the entirety of Shibuya. We know that Yuji's soul was getting beaten down so badly that it was down to 10%. This is a combination of all of the mental things and challenges that Yuji had to go through throughout the entirety of Shibuya, and I know that some people are sort of thinking that Yuji getting this curse technique is bad, that his curse technique either should have been something else, or that it doesn't make sense that Yuji can just keep getting stronger without training. But the point of Yuji's character is that he's supposed to get stronger through just fighting alone and losing. Gege said that he didn't even consider to improve Itadori's battle score that much at the time, and that he just wanted Yuji to go stronger through many defeats, and that just having this happen would be convincing enough for the readers that he didn't need to have a training arc. So as you can see, Gege sort of just has been letting us know this entire time that training isn't the method for Yuji to get stronger, that Yuji was meant to get stronger through just fighting, resolving himself, and keep pushing forward over and over. And that is sort of the story behind Yuji's character, is the word persistence basically. Yuji has always just been getting knocked down and persisting forward and keeps moving. And that goes back to the whole him being in touch with his soul thing. The more that he's been knocked down throughout the series, he's also becoming more in touch with his soul, as during this time, his opponent of course was Mahito. And he even recognizes right after he defeats Mahito that he was like Mahito the entire time. That he and Mahito were basically the same, and that in order for Yuji to completely move forward, he had to kill Mahito. So this whole interaction of having Mahito be the antagonist for Yuji, having Mahito be his counterpart, having Mahito be the only person in the series that is just pure soul basically, like the guy can see the soul, manipulate the soul, and do everything else with the soul. Having this guy be Yuji's counterpart was sort of foreshadowing for what has just happened in the recent chapter. It seems like manipulating the soul or having something to do with the soul was always meant to be a part of Yuji's character. Now, the reason that Yuji also has these abilities could have something to do with the fact that at the end of the day, he is Kenjaku's son, and we know that Kenjaku is maybe the freakiest guy we have seen in recent shonen. Kenjaku is stated as to have done heinous things to a woman over 150 years ago, and that is when he made the cursed wombs, the death paintings, Choso, Eso, Kechizu, and the other brothers that were just never revealed. And we see that Kenjaku was experimenting with them, and that is how Choso, Eso, and Kechizu had their abilities and grew to be the way that they were, because they were half cursed spirit and half human. And I think that Kenjaku did experiment with Yuji as well. And we know that Kenjaku's only main intention of creating Yuji was to create a strong vessel for Sukuna. But within doing so, he may have passed some things on to Yuji. And I know that most people think that Yuji's awakening was going to be blood manipulation, or maybe it was going to be the gravity technique that his mother had. But it may be something to deal with the soul that was passed on, because we do know that Kenjaku hops from body to body and then takes over people's souls, which is why Kenjaku says in Shibuya he believes the soul is the body and the body is the soul, is because whenever he takes over these people's bodies, he gets their memories and their souls as well. So maybe all of these things that are going on with Kenjaku, all of his correlations to the soul and the body, were passed on to Yuji. And this, combined with the fact that Mahito is his counterpart, and all of these soul learning and soul development that has been happening for Yuji throughout the entire series, has just all been boiling up to this one moment that has happened in the recent chapter, to where Yuji can now swap souls with people. But the main thing about this new technique that Yuji has is, how good is he with it, and what is the use? Because it looks like he's just getting beat up by himself while he's training. You know, when you swap souls with somebody, you're going into their body. You don't have any experience in their body. And of course, the person you swap with won't have any experience in yours. So if anything, it would just make the fight very awkward. The best case for Yuji is if he swaps souls with somebody who's much stronger than him in a fight, obviously. And that is probably what he's going to try to do to Sukuna if it comes down to the line. The best way for Yuji to approach the situation, and it is sort of hinted at by Kenjaku, that Sukuna might win the fight with Gojo, and once he does, it will be left up to the main cast to sort of save the day. And yes, even though the main cast will have Maki, Hikari, and Yuta, Kenjaku also will be trying to deal with some of them, so if Kenjaku beats any of them in a fight, the main cast's strongest people will have been weakened. So this leaves it up to, well, Yuji. Yuji now has this power up where he can swap souls with people. The only big problem that would arise from this is if Yuji pulls up to Sukuna, swaps souls with him, and then the power that Sukuna has just swaps with him. You know, the thing that would make this ability so good for Yuji is that he can just swap bodies with Sukuna and Yuji gets all of Sukuna's power, while Sukuna is stuck in a Yuji body with just Yuji power. But if Yuji swaps with Sukuna and all of the Sukuna powers goes with Sukuna as well back into Yuji's body, then they're just in the same predicament where you have this strong Sukuna in Yuji's body again, and it's been this way for the entire series. So that's why I'm saying this curse technique just needs to be verified basically, and that is probably what they've been doing in training. Maybe they've already discovered that when you swap with somebody, their curse energy or their powers don't come with them. Or maybe they've already run tests where they can tell that, okay, when Yuji goes to swap with Sukuna, all of Sukuna's curse energy won't go with him. Because the best case for Yuji, and if you've ever seen Dragon Ball, there was a guy named Captain Ginyu, and he realized that Goku was stronger than him. So what he did instead of fighting Goku straight up was just simply swap bodies with Goku. And because Captain Ginyu was now in control of Goku's body, he was now stronger than Goku, who was in Captain Ginyu's body. And this is exactly what Yuji needs. If they can sort of get Sukuna in this predicament where Yuji pulls up, swaps the two of them around, well then look at that. The big bad villain, the guy who has been terrorizing Jujutsu Kaisen since the beginning of the series, the guy who was the infamous curse over 1,000 years ago who destroyed everybody and innocent people, is now right in front of you in Yuji's body with only Yuji's level of power. And the moment that the main cast sees that Sukuna is in such a vulnerable state in Yuji's body, they could all just jump him and kill him. Now yes, Yuji's body would be killed in the act as well, but I assure you, Yuji wouldn't care. If you told Yuji that he would probably die, or even they would have to get rid of his body and try to work around something in the future for him, he would just go with it. Because it's been pretty clear since the beginning of the series that Yuji has resolved himself to be willing to die if it meant that his friends were okay. Yuji has said throughout the series multiple times that he is just a cog in the Jujutsu world. And we also know that he feels some sort of guilt for what's been happening to Megumi recently, so no doubt if Yuji could just die while getting rid of Sukuna, he would definitely do it. And we see probably the most heartfelt moment from Yuji, the most resolved Yuji we've seen, when he gets this flashback of Sukuna saying, "I'll tell you this, he doesn't have the guts to end his own life." And Sukuna said this while talking about Yuji. And Yuji says, "Are you still underestimating me? Have you forgotten I've already died once? We have enough points now, everything's fine on Fushiguro's end too. Even though I don't know why my senpais haven't added the rules yet, but once that's done, I'll gladly die. When I die, more than half of Sukuna will disappear and Gojo Sensei will return. It's a cheap price to pay." So as you can see right here, Yuji's just not willing to die. He's gladly willing to die. Yuji's willing to do anything if it means getting rid of Sukuna. And it is sort of sad, you know, in hindsight when you look at it, Yuji didn't ask for any of this. Even at the beginning of the series, in chapter 1, the reason he ate the finger was to help save Megumi, because Megumi needed help in fighting against a giant cursed spirit. And all because he ate that finger at the beginning of the series to help someone, he cursed himself for the rest of his life. Now I will say this, for anybody who thinks that Yuji's curse technique should have been something else, I don't blame you. I also thought that Yuji's curse technique would be something else. I thought it would be blood manipulation, because I thought that he would eat the other curse wombs, you know, the death paintings. And I know that some people thought he would get gravity manipulation because Kenjaku was in Yuji's mom's body when he gave birth to Yuji, and Yuji's mom had an anti-gravity technique. So there was a group of people who thought, well, Yuji will get a gravity technique. And I know that some other people actually thought that Yuji would just be able to use Sukuna's techniques. He would get these slashes for himself. But it turns out that none of us were right. It actually ended up being that Yuji can swap souls with people. So I will say this, if you were like me and thought that Yuji's curse technique would be something else, it's okay. You know, I don't think anybody saw that this curse technique was coming, and I don't blame you. But I will say this for anybody who thinks it's bad that this is Yuji's curse technique, I will say just trust the process. And I will say, normally just trusting the process with Gege has been the correct option, because as far as we know, Gege hasn't let us down yet. We've gotten all of the hype moments we've asked for. All of the narrative points that we've wanted in the past, we've always gotten. So I don't think that Gege will just abandon that style of writing now, because I do know that a lot of people think that this recent chapter was rushed, and although I do agree this recent chapter did move very fast, I will trust Gege, and that something good will bloom from this, and that Yuji getting this curse technique, the way that this recent chapter happened, and all of the things moving forward would just make perfect sense. And you know, maybe for the first time in the series, Gege will stop beating up Yuji. Maybe for the first time, something successful will happen for Yuji, where he can gain a new ability and finally be able to protect his friends. With that being said, I want to thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. And if you enjoyed, then please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as I do post different topics that you guys give me and I feel come up with on my own. Thank you for watching. See you next time.